Yeah, that's the point exactly. It has to have the element of surprise. I'm a rhythm guitar player, so it's almost leads all the time for the whole song, and I was, oh fuck, that's not fun. It's filmed at two different schools. The other one was my former high school. It was so cool to get back there. And that Cadillac, that specific car used to belong to Alexi Laiho from Children of Bodom. So I was like, okay, yeah, let's borrow that car. Oh yeah, I did. Actually, yeah. I went to the bar with our singer and and we had a good time.
Hello everyone, today with us is Markus Ghoul from the band the Ghoulstars. They recently released their debut album on Season of Mist. And hello Markus.
Hello.
And let's start talking about the band. So, as I read in the press release from the label, you were formed in 2021, and usually bands, as soon as they formed, they try to release some music, put it out as a single, maybe get some quick EP or album. But for you, it took, 5 years until you have your debut album, and it took also a while for any songs to show up. Like, what was behind that decision?
Well, I'm used to that concept myself as well. I'm used to like putting out an album and then doing shows and stuff. But this time I wanted to go way back in time, so to speak, and to play shows before releasing any material and just try to get some sort of a live momentum and also try out the songs live before recording them. So it was a good learning process for me as well to do this way and not the regular way that I'm used to. But yeah, we played a bunch of shows here in Finland, and the writing process of the album was actually quite fast for me, but at least we knew what we were doing when we were recording the songs, as they were we played them live many times before. And yeah, it took its time, but I think it was healthy to grow this way this time. And for me personally, this is my eighth full-length album, so I wanted to try something different.
And you received coverage like, even before any music was released. You had coverage from CNN and Metal Hammer, like pretty big medias. And what were they reacting to the live shows, to the some YouTube videos from those shows?
Those big ones, they wrote about us or showed us on TV. It was after like the second single, but there were some press coverage of our shows, and there even from abroad. There was like a media that flew from Wales to see us in our hometown of Kuopio, and they wrote a gig review, and people came to see us from all over Finland before we had even one song out. I think it's due to the fact that there's four guys in the band, and every one of us has played in bands that have released albums, and we sort of have a fan base already, like the four of us as individuals. So when we grouped up and became a band and started playing shows, it gained some recognition from the fans of our previous bands and the press. So it was a good position to be in, because if you're starting out a new band, it's not always like that. And so we're sort of very lucky to be in a situation like that.
Yeah, I think it's really it was interesting to see that like you have no music out, no album out, but then as you said, even before you put out any music, you already had people coming all over from Finland to your shows, and like So was the crowd mostly reacting to, as you said, you are musicians with experience, so you already had some following. So were the fans following your posts, your shout outs on social media, or did it start like that? But then there were also newer fans who actually saw maybe some online content, some online videos of your shows.
Yeah, I think it's both, and we managed to play with rather well-known bands. We were opening for some well-known bands, and I think people were reacting to our personal social media posts, and because the band didn't have much of a following in social media before the album came out. And a lot of people just probably wanted to see what we're doing. What is the Ghoulstars? And I think that was very interesting for the band to see if, since we hadn't released anything before doing those shows, so it was very interesting for the band to see the reaction of the crowd, because it was based on the live show. And one of the major differences between this band and our previous bands is that since all of us have been playing somewhat gloomy and doomy and angry music in the past, and we're used to seeing people standing in the crowd like this with a grumpy face on. But now, yeah, like that. But at these shows, people are actually smiling. They were like, yeah, because this music is sort of uplifting, and if you're familiar with the background of where the songs come from, which means like B cinema, B horror, sci-fi, stuff like that, and a lot of nods to the 80s and all sorts of old school stuff. The people that have gotten what we're trying to achieve with this band artistically, they have been like blown away. But some people have not gotten it at all. So it's almost like divided. Either you love it or you hate it, nothing in between.
And I think it's a good thing, right? You want your, not just music, but in any art, you want people to have feelings about it and not to be just indifferent. They're like, and just walk past it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's much better than, a lukewarm 3 out of 5.
Yeah, so the Ghoulstars is the whole world. It's not just the music, but you have your aesthetic around the themes of the music and your whole universe, your cynic names, your ghoul names, and corpse paint. So can you please tell us about the background of all of that, how that idea was born?
Well, the band was actually born as a therapy project of mine. I just wanted to try to write some short and catchy songs. But then one thing led to another, and all of a sudden I had like an album's worth of stuff that was too good to just have on my personal computer here. So as the songs were very much influenced by B horror and sci-fi, it was clear from the very start that we're not gonna have our jeans and t-shirts, band t-shirts on at stage. We need to have some sort of a visual image that complements the music, and the music complements what we look like, which brings us to the name of the band, the Ghoulstars. I think that name pretty much sums up what the band is about. And also the front cover artwork is a nod to the 80s or late 70s actually, because it's sort of a tribute to Destroyer by Kiss, which is one of my favorite album covers of all time. I actually have a Paul Stanley guitar right there. Nice man. and Kiss was the first band that I ever remember like getting head over heels in love with when I was like 5 years old or something like that. So it basically just combines stuff that is very super important to me in my past and also to the other guys in the band. And I'm pretty good at coming up with concepts, and it's fun to make a concept like this because there's so many things you can, grab from stuff that all of us enjoy, and then just make our own mishmash of art that we're doing. And obviously that's something that some people might find as, hey, this is one of those gimmick bands that just try to look like something and they don't even care to listen to the album. But on the other hand, those guys that I think the music by itself is I think it works spectacularly well. We wouldn't need a concept like this in order to make a good album, but all the visuals are just like a good bonus on top. And as for me, I see this as an artistic entity, and you can't just throw away a part of it because then the puzzle wouldn't be complete. So it has to have all parts, even though all the parts work pretty well by themselves also. But yeah, that's something that I pay a lot of attention to, details and the wholeness of the concept.
And how did you go about finding musicians for Ghoulstars? As you mentioned, you wrote the music yourself initially, and then to play shows. I know that you have the bandmate from your other band, from Laakso, and also you have some guest musicians on the album, like including Matthias, who we actually recently had on our channel before they, as part of End Oceans, but he's also in Fintroll. So were you recruiting for skills, like people that you know, or were you also looking for somebody who is like-minded and who were buying into the whole Ghoul universe?
Well, it was obvious from the start that the first guy that I phoned up was the drummer from Laakso, Tony. He's my number one go-to guy with all my projects. I always pick him because he's so freaking talented as a drummer, but also he's so laid back, and I've had zero problems with him ever. And I've played with him in bands from 2010, I think. So that's 16 years. And I wanted to have obviously great musicians, but more importantly, guys that are like-minded and mellow that I get along with. So then I phoned up the bass player, Markus, whom I've also known for a really long time. And I think we've discussed some musical projects in the past that we should make something together. And at first I thought it would be a trio with Markus Makkonen singing. He used to play in Hooded Menace and Sadistic Forest and Nerve Saw and bands like that. And actually the album by Nerve Saw, they made one album and one EP, and I love that album. So at first I thought that, okay, it's going to be a trio with Markus Makkonen, who also sings in Nerve Saw, that he's going to do the vocals, like growling stuff or screaming stuff. And we actually played a show as a trio before we recruited the singer. But then we realized that, okay, these songs are too good to just mess up with one style of vocals, which is aggressive shouting. So we need a sort of like Rob Zombie's style of half clean
Mhm.
vocals, harsh vocals. And Arthur, our singer, he's the only guy that I did not know before he joined the band. I asked around that from my musician friends that do they know anybody who could fit this sort of music, and a bunch of them, including the drummer, said that, hey, I know this guy Arthur. He's awesome, and he sings in this band called Thermate.
I checked them out. Our drummer, he works in the same company as or used to work for the same company as this Arthur guy. So he said that, okay, I'm gonna meet Arthur at this company meeting. So we're gonna drink beer and I can ask him to join. So that's how he joined the band. And I actually invited him to this very room that I'm at right now, which is my home studio. And I had an album's worth of music with my demo vocals, and we listened to the album or the demo of the album here, and he was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, this is something that I definitely want to do." And one of the things was like sort of a meant to be sign was that I think one of our major influences is the Misfits, and I love Danzig. And one of the first things that I realized when Arthur came here, he had like a big tattoo from the third Samhain album, which was the band of Glenn Danzig between the Misfits and Danzig. So I was like, yeah, this is meant to be. So yeah, good musicians, but more importantly, like-minded and mellow, easygoing people.
So, for your album, for your debut album, the Dark Overlords of the Universe, were you testing your songs live, and was that the main factor to pick them for the album? Like, what worked the best on stage?
Um, More or less, but I wrote more songs that were actually on the album, but I just decided that these are not as good as the ones on the album, so I just throw them away. Oh yeah, you were asking about the guests on the album. Matthias from And Oceans and Fintroll actually recorded some of the vocals for this album. We went to his home studio or not home studio, his studio in Seinäjoki, Finland. And since we were there and we were recording shouts and screams and backing stuff, it was a no-brainer to just ask him if he could participate as well. And he's also an old friend of mine, so it was fun to record stuff with him. And the other guest on the album is Tuple Salmela, and he sings backups on the title track of the album, which needed higher um, clean vocals on the chorus than Arthur could do. So he's a friend of mine and he lives close by. So I just phoned him up and told him that, hey, we're recording this album and can you do some vocals? And he was like, yeah, just drive here and let's do them right away. So that was also something that very much boosted the chorus um, of the song and was also fun to do.
Yeah, and it is pretty catchy song. I think like when you after you listen the album for the just one time, first time, I think that what stays immediately. That's very
Yeah.
catchy chorus. And I think for anyone even seeing you live for the first time, they also would probably remember that the most.
Yeah, and that's the crappiest song to play live as a guitarist. I don't like that at all because I'm a rhythm guitar player, so it's almost leads all the time for the whole song, and I was, oh fuck, that's not fun. But yeah, in my mind when I wrote that song, the melody and the chorus reminded me of In Flames, and it's always fun to hear what other people hear. Um, what they are reminded of, but nobody has told me that that sounds like In Flames, but to me it sounded like In Flames.
I guess that's a good thing. I think
Yeah,
another song that I like is the Ballad of the Cursed Bandits. I don't know, maybe because I like Western aesthetics, maybe because I like trains, but you also put the sounds of the trains in it and the galloping horses. So yeah, how do you approach adding those like movie kind of score sounds in your songs?
I think it's a very, very important element of this band to, since we're doing this cinematic aesthetics all around, so it's almost necessary to have like immersive stuff that brings out the cinematic quality of the song even more. And that's why we have samples from movies, but on that song, they're not from movies, they're just from different other places. And that song, well, it's a long story, but we were actually supposed to have do the 90s thing. Like, for example, if you take Nirvana's Nevermind, when the album stops, it has like 10 minutes of silence and then Endless Nameless, the bonus track, hidden there. We were supposed to do that, but and since our drummer said that, hey, I want to play D beat in one of the songs. So as we were starting to record the guitars, and I had this friend over, and we were checking guitar sounds with him. And then I told the other guys, the recording guy and our drummer, that hey, I'm gonna take this guy home, and I'll be back in 20 minutes. And you have like 20 minutes of time to just come up with some drum beats and just record them. When I came back from to the studio, they had recorded like a song worth of drums, and I was like, okay. Yeah, I grabbed my guitar and came up with the riffs on the spot. So it took me like, I don't know, 15 minutes to come up with the riffs to that song. And when I made the lyrics and all the samples later, but it was quite clear from the start that hey, this song kicks so much ass. It's one of our favorites. We can't have that as a hidden bonus somewhere. So it has to come up and stand on its own. So so yeah, I paid a lot of attention um, to the details of the immersive details of that song, and it was actually quite funny when I played it to my wife for the first time, and she was like, "What? What's going on?" And she just started laughing that you can't have this stuff on an actual album. What are you doing? I was like, yeah, that's the point exactly. It has to have the element of surprise. That's for that song it works very very well.
And you also not just main songwriter, but you also, we can say, movie director for Ghoulstars because you direct all the videos. You are behind the videos, and one of them that was released earlier this year is "To Ghoul For School," and also the opening track of the album. Was it filmed in US? Because it looks like it's an American school, and you also are riding Cadillac there, American car.
No, it was filmed in my hometown actually, and for that video, I haven't directed all the videos. Directed the Dark Overlords of the Universe, but obviously I'm behind the scenes, like talking to the director and coming up with ideas that we will do. But for that song, we actually filmed. It's filmed at two different schools. The other one was my former high school. It was so cool to get back there after many, many years of not even stepping indoors to that school. But yeah, there's this line that says, "Hey, sit back in my Cadillac" on the lyrics. So I was thinking to myself that, okay, do I know anybody in my hometown that has a Cadillac? Because Cadillacs are very rare here. So I know this one guy, and that Cadillac, that specific car used to belong to Alexi Laiho from Children of Bodom. So I was like, okay, yeah, let's borrow that car. And so we're driving around my hometown in Alexi Laiho's Cadillac, and we're going to my former high school. So it was a quite a time traveling trip of nostalgia. And I'm a huge fan of Children of Bottom's early work. I think Hatebreeder is like one of the best albums ever made. So it was quite cool. And the other school is also close by here. So, but yeah, that was directed by Sam Jamsen, who's also a good friend of mine, who actually used to live like a few hundred meters that way.
And so when you were a kid, were you too Ghoul for school, or were you a very, no, obedient kid and very like good kid with good marks, etc.?
Well, it depends on what time period you're asking about. I was pretty um, quite mellow, but in like grades 7 to 9, not as much. But I actually went to school for 2 years in the States in San Diego, California, and some of the lyrics on that song are semi based on my own experiences of American junior high school. So so yeah, that was a it was a fun song to write and a fun video to do, and it's definitely one of the highlights at our shows. People seem to love it, and the chorus is so simple. It's only two ghoul for school, so everybody can sing along and remember it easily. So. But yeah, that song is so full of like Easter eggs and intertextual references to movies and tracks to other artists and even the drum beat at the breakdown part is a nod to Wayne's World and but yeah.
And yeah, I didn't know that you went to school specifically in San Diego. So I'm in Santa Cruz, also on the coast in
Okay,
United States,
cool.
but another big surfing city. And there's always, I think, competition between different cities in California, who is the actual surfing capital. So when you were there in States in San Diego, did you get into surfing?
I used to bodyboard, which is kind of like surfing for geeks, entry level surfing. But I used to go swimming a lot in the Pacific Ocean, and those were like one of the best days of my life. I really loved spending time there, and I constantly long back. And we were actually supposed to go there with my family like this summer, but since the situation in the world of politics and warfare is not that great at the moment, we decided to go elsewhere and return to California later.
Hopefully, we can also someday see you with Ghoulstars on stage in California.
I'd so much love that.
You said you went swimming in California. I know San Diego is a little bit warmer, but we have here the like cold stream, so water is pretty cold in California. But I guess for you, being from Finland, it was not too cold.
It was cold, but I was so young back then, so I didn't mind. But nowadays, I don't know what it would take a gun to my head now go to the ocean. But but yeah, back then it was no problem. I just loved swimming there and enjoy my time at the beach.
What was for you the biggest culture shock, like Finland school years between US school years?
The first thing that I remember when we moved there was that everything is so big compared to, to Finland. Even the shopping carts, they were like twice as size. And like the cereal boxes, and everything was huge. And like there were the fruit selection was much wider. And but as for school, it was totally different on how you get graded. In Finland, it was like there were like a couple of tests, and you get a grade um, that is like the average of those two tests that you take. So if you get like 7 out of 10 and 8 out of 10, your number is probably 8 out of 10. But at the States, we had to do all these assignments that gathered points. So they were as important as the tests. So I was actually very good at school and in the States. That sort of studying was like um, much better for me than just try to learn stuff and remember everything. I actually would have made the honor roll. My grade point average was 3.5 out of 4. So I was a nerd.
Yeah, also about other personal touch. I think you mentioned in some of your previous interviews that the dead in Purgatory and they dance upon our graves. The lyrics have personal moments behind them. So can you elaborate on that, please?
Not very much.
As much as you can. Yeah.
Um, yeah, because I was when I was writing these songs, and a lot of them are about some monsters like vampires, zombies, or whatever. And I was dealing with some stuff that was weighing on me a lot. So that stuff sort of manifested itself onto the lyrics. I didn't uh, plan to make lyrics that are exclusively about some monsters or horror movies, but also I didn't have any rules if I can bring some personal stuff to the mix or not. But as for me, I think the album benefited from personal touch because now like for me it's linked to that time period and those thoughts that I had and to those people that I'm sort of writing about. And also I don't think like every single line of those two songs are reference to some personal thing or not, but I think they fit the songs very well, and I'm proud of those lyrics. And there's another Western sort of song with whistling, "The Dead in Purgatory." Yeah, and that's like one of my favorite songs, except the C part. The C part is not as good as the rest of the song. But they dance upon our graves. I think if I were to pick my personal favorite song from the album. I would probably pick that one. It basically has it's basically a miniature of the whole album. It starts with a doomy part, and then there's sort of like I don't know, semi-Western vibe on the verses, and then a super catchy chorus, and a very, very catchy C part with whoa, that sort of singing, and then it even has like a death metal outro. So it's basically the album squeezed into one song.
Do you have plans for the tour to support the release of your new album? And how big will the tour gonna be?
Mm, we recently signed to this agency, and right now, the first show that we're gonna be playing is in October. We're gonna play in our hometown, and this is not public yet, but after that, we're gonna play in Helsinki, and then we're gonna have a tour in December, which is also not publicized yet, so I can't talk about that much more, but we're supporting a band that's way bigger than us here in Finland. And our agency has some plans for next year, but I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'm very, very much hoping that we will make it abroad and even to the States, but that's quite a long shot because of logistical costs. It would be so great. But as for like Spotify statistics, the States are like number one for us, like by far, and then Germany and Finland. So I hope that will make Central Europe at least in the coming year or years.
Yeah, that would be great. I think that aesthetic works well for folks in US. I know there are a lot of fans of the horror movies, B movies, as you mentioned, are big influence of the band and also the aesthetics as a whole.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too, and we've gotten a lot of great response from the States. So, and I've been kind of surprised at how many interviews I've done to the States. So it's good that it's such a huge market and a huge country that even if 1% of people who enjoy B-movie stuff mixed with music find us, that would be great.
Probably. It's also, yeah, for touring, it makes it difficult because the distances, they're very big. You
Yeah,
either have to fly and it's very expensive, or you have to spend pretty much the whole time either on stage or on the bus.
yeah, yeah. But you never know. It would be great if an opportunity presents itself. So let's keep our fingers crossed.
Definitely. For me, it's always impressive that when bands in Finland, they can go on tour in Finland, and when you like, I look up the population of those cities, you're like, oh, it's like 10,000 people, 20,000 people, like,
Yeah.
and they can still get the full venue of metal fans. And I think Finland is what number one country in terms of density of the bands per capita.
Yeah, metal bands specifically.
Yeah, specifically metal bands.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good country to be in a metal band or a punk band. So it would be kind of very difficult if we were say like Portugal or something. That would be very hard. Even though they got great bands as well. But I don't know. I think as for metal shows, it's this country is a good one.
Definitely a lot of good bands, and a bunch of them you covered as journalist, as writer, as
Yeah,
you authorized the Amorphis biography, and you also wrote book about the Big Five folk metal band from Finland, and
yeah,
so you were on the other side. You were on my side for a long time, asking
yeah.
bands questions, trying to find the questions that can open up specific parts of their biography, etc. So how does that change how you answer the questions these days?
It's a good question. First of all, when I was doing like music journalism, which I still do occasionally, the most interesting thing for me is to learn stuff from people that I look up to or are have achieved something musically or are interesting human beings. It's always good to have great conversations with different sorts of people. But as for me, because I hate going through the tape again and transcribing stuff. So I try to keep my answers interesting and not too long. Sometimes I manage to do that, but not always. But I think that's always in my mind, back of my head, when I try to answer questions at interviews.
And do you also like have the plan for the whole story of the band of the Ghoulstars, how you present it in media, in printed or video, online, YouTube?
Um, yeah, basically, I've done mm, the skeleton meat meat on skeleton versions of those. But I'm used to with all my previous bands, I've written the bio and written all the press releases and then just handed them to the label and label pretty much just sends them out without changing anything. But at Season of Mist, our main publicist guy is from the States, and he has done like a terrific job um, promoting the band. And I sent him my version of our bio, and he just basically rewrote it. And he always sends me everything to check if everything is correct and fine. But yeah, for this band, that has been something new to me. That somebody else is actually doing the work and not me. I do basically most of the band work anyway, but yeah, it's good to know that you actually have a promotion guy that or girl who knows what they're doing.
So you, as being the mastermind behind Gold Stars, music, visuals, everything, do you have some anxiety if you need to give up some part to another person, or you're totally cool with that?
Um, I don't think I do because I've been so lucky that I have had the opportunity to handpick, like for example, the album cover artwork. I told the artist Niko Anttila that okay, this is what I have in mind, and just wrote everything down that I wanted to have on the cover. Then he sends me the first draft, and I was like, "Whoa, this is even better than I imagined." And as for the videos, same thing. I've been like positively surprised by that. And the guy Adrien, who did the graphic design on our album, and he has also done a couple of shirts for us. He's a in-house guy at Season of Mist, and I've admired his work for so long, and he's done, like, for example, the last three And Ocean album covers, and also the booklet stuff, and he's done like Rotting Christ and Abbath and records like that. So I was so happy when I told the label that they asked if I have anybody in mind. I said, yeah, I want Adrien, your guy. I want him to do our album. And he did such a brilliant job. Like, I don't know if you've seen the back cover of the album. Like, for example, it's so cool. He absolutely nailed it.
So
So yeah,
perfect match.
it yeah, it's always great that you can when you can pick people that you know that they're going to do a good job, and those guys enjoy what they're doing. So it's always a great match like that.
As the closing. So what did you do on the night that the album dropped? What, May 15th this year?
Oh, I don't even remember. I think I went to a bar by myself. We were supposed to meet up with the guys. Oh yeah, I think we actually had a rehearsal with the guys, except for the bass player who lives in who doesn't live in the same city. He lives like an hour's drive away. I think we played the whole set at our rehearsal place, and also some covers, because the fact is that the album is only like 34 minutes long, so we have to play more. So we've been playing, like, for example, Sign of the Wolf by Pentagram, which is like, I love that song, and completely underrated as a band as Pentagram. And then we played um, various Misfits songs, and then also Summertime Suicide by Murder Dolls and stuff like that. So I think we played like a whole set of songs, and I think we went to a bar, yeah. Oh yeah, I did. Actually, yeah. I went to the bar with our singer. And and we had a good time. But not the same, not the next morning, but the night was great.
Sounds like a great celebration of the release of the album. So everybody check out the Ghoulstars album. It's already available on all platforms or vinyl, CD, whatever you like. And thank you for your time today, Markus.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
TheMetalist.com. Subscribe.